are talking about a personal narrative because that's what we're going to be writing soon, right? So, today we're going to be talking about what that is and seeing an example of a personal narrative in our book, okay? So, on page 25, we're going to look at the yellow box up at the top, okay? Most of us like to read and listen to stories. Narrative writing is writing that tells a story. A personal narrative is a story about you. Have you had any unusual, exciting, happy, or scary experiences? So think for a second. Have you had any unusual, exciting, happy, or scary moments? Just think. Okay? What did you learn from your experience? You can write a personal narrative to tell about something interesting that happened to you. Here is a personal narrative written by Shabu. My new friend. Last year, I went with my dad to visit his grandmother at Berrydale Nursing Center. I didn't know I was going to make a new friend. I only knew I felt nervous. My great-grandmother was sitting outside the door of her room wearing a silky blue robe. Her gray hair was pulled back into a long braid. When she saw me, she smiled and said, "This must be Shabu." Her voice was soft and shaky, but her smile was full of love. I didn't feel nervous anymore. My dad wheeled her wheelchair out onto the deck. She talked to my dad in Bengali. It is the language of her people in India. I could not understand, so I just kept quiet. Then my great-grandmother turned to me and said in English, "Shabu, will you read?" She handed me the little Bible in her lap, and I saw that it was open to the 23rd Psalm. I read it out loud. When I finished, she began to speak in Bengali. She quoted the whole psalm for me in her own language. Then she smiled again and gave me my hand a squeeze. My dad prayed and we took great-grandma back to her room. Now I write letters to my great-grandmother, and she writes me back right away. Sometimes she writes a sentence in Bengali at the end, and I ask my dad to read it for me. Great-grandma is 90 years old, but I feel as if she is one of my best friends. So, this boy wrote a story about meeting his great-grandma, right? He talks in the very beginning. He said, I didn't know I was going to meet a new friend. All I knew was I was nervous. Okay? That's a very creative way of showing their emotion in the beginning of the story without just coming right out and saying, I was nervous, right? Saying, I didn't know I was going to make a new friend. All I knew was that I was nervous, right? Gives it a little bit more character and a little bit more personality because this is a personal narrative. So you need to tell me how you felt, what you saw, what you heard, okay? He goes on and describes that what she was wearing and the color of her hair. He didn't go into deep detail though, did he? He just said, let me find it. Wearing a silky blue robe, her gray hair was pulled back into a long braid. That's the only description, other than the fact that she's sitting in a wheelchair, that we really get, right? But you can see it, right? You can see an older lady, we find out later she's 90, sitting in a wheelchair with a blue silk robe and her hair in a braid, right? So, it gives pictures and it gives images. If you read a book, everyone look up here. If you read a book and they didn't give you any details, they just said, I was nervous, I met my grandma, we sat outside, she spoke a different language, my dad prayed, I read the Bible, we left, I write letters to my grandma. That's the same story, but was that as good of a story? No, because it didn't have those details and those personal thoughts and feelings, okay? So, when you write your own personal narrative, guys, look up here. When you write your own personal narrative, you are going to be putting those thoughts, those feelings, what you saw down. All right, so we take these stories and your story, you're going to put details. Because guess what? I wasn't there when your event happened. Okay? I wasn't there when you rode the tallest roller coaster at the park, or you went on your favorite vacation, or you met your new baby brother, or you got your new pet, right? I wasn't there, but I want you to tell it to me to where I can picture it. I can see it, because I love to read your guys' writing, but it has to have detail, right? You don't want to have so much detail that the story gets lost, right? So what if Shabu had said, my grandma wore a blue robe, it went down to her knee, she had tennis shoes on, they were white, her hair was in a braid, she's got blue eyes, she has, her wheelchair is black, it's got 2 big wheels in the back, 2 smaller wheels in the front, her feet are on the wheelchair. Are all those details important? No. It's still good detail. They took a lot of time to write that down, but it's too much detail because it's not the point of the story. Does that make sense? So, you guys are going to be looking back at this story a lot, because when we talk about this, you're going to be using this as an example, okay? So, the page we're going to do today, we're going to flip it over and do the other side, but we're not going to tear this one out because it's going to have some of our ideas on it, okay? We don't want to get rid of our ideas because it's going to help us write later. Make sense? Okay, so flip it over and look at page 26. Look at page 26 for me. A personal narrative. Do you know someone who is a good storyteller? Most good storytellers think about their audience, or the people who will be reading or listening to their story. And I'm going to let you guys know, there's going to be 2 different people in the classroom that you're going to read this story to. One that's going to help you proofread and make some changes. One that you're going to read your final draft to. So that not only am I going to read it, but your classmates, you're going to have at least 2 classmates read your story too. So be thinking of your audience. What details would your audience like to know? What would they like to know about this story? Okay? Then they add interesting details, dialogue, and sometimes humor to the tale of the audience to enjoy. What is dialogue? Grace? Close. You're close. Ben? Culture? No. It's the people speaking. But I get why you think that. Because the dialogue is the characters speaking. You know how you have it in quotes? You know what I'm talking about? When you read a story and it's in quotes, that means someone's talking. Bobbleheads. Do you know what I'm talking about? Alright. So, that is dialogue. When a character is speaking and it's in quotes, that is dialogue. Okay? Everyone say dialogue.
Dialogue.
Good. Stories can make us feel as if we are visiting another place or another time. We can also learn from the stories of others. Think of the You Are There in our social studies book. They give detail and they give accounts from different times and places, right? And they want you to picture it. That's kind of what you're doing. I want it to be like you are there at this event. Okay, Charisma? No. Now look at the orange box. This is tips for writing a personal narrative. Think about who will be reading your personal narrative. Write about something that you remember well. You want something that you have a good memory of. You don't want to be writing a story and be like, well, I only half remember it, right? Then you might want to pick something else if you only half remember it. Keegan? Nope, because this is your story. Get the reader's attention with an opening sentence. Okay, then number 4, tell the event of the narrative in the order they are that they happened. So Shabu talked about what they did first and then what they did. So they saw his grandma. They went out to the deck. He read the Bible. She quoted it back in Bengali. And then his dad prayed and they went home, right? He said it in the order it happened. Use dialogue to make the people in your narrative come alive. Dialogue is spoken conversation between two people in your narrative, at least two people. Remember to use quotation marks around somebody's spoken words. Make your ending sentence tell what you learned or how you felt about what happened. Look back at the front page. The very last sentence. It says, Great Grandma is 90 years old, but I feel as if she is one of my best friends. That tells us what he learned, right? He learned that his grandma, no matter what her age is, became one of his best friends. Now look back at 26. Number 7 said, make your ending sentence tell what you learned or how you felt about what happened. Okay? So, we are going to think about the funny, unusual, exciting, or happy thing that happened to you. And then you are going to list all the possible topics of your personal narrative. I want you to write at least 4.
4 sentences?
No, 4 ideas. Okay? So, these are where you're going to put ideas. 4 things that you might be able to write your personal narrative about. Okay? So, maybe it was your favorite vacation. Maybe it was the day you met your little sibling. Maybe it was the day you got a pet. Maybe it was a special holiday where something really exciting happened. Okay? You're writing something that you remember really well that you can write a good story about and give lots of detail. Everyone understand? Okay. So today all we are doing is writing down our ideas. If you can come up with 5, I want you to. But you have to come up with at least 4. Okay? Do not rip this out. Do not turn this in. It stays in your book. Okay? I will be coming around to check and make sure you did fill it in though. Okay?